Whether you are willing to admit it or not, it is an indisputable fact that China's desert control projects have benefited the world. Did you know that there is a desert in China that is about to disappear? At present, 90% of it is covered in green. Did you know that in the endless desert, China has built the longest desert highway, and it is also the first desert highway with zero carbon emissions? Did you know that there is a huge secret granary buried under the endless desert in China? Well, that's not all. The Chinese even built an amazing huge reservoir in the desert. Can you imagine these things already happened in China? How is that possible? How did the Chinese make it? Okay, let us take a look at these 4 greatest desert projects in China. In today's video, I will introduce 2 of them, the first disappearing desert and the desert highway with zero carbon emissions. Okay, let's get started. The Taklamakan Desert, located in the Darim Basin in southern Xinjiang, is the largest desert in China and the second largest mobile desert in the world. The desert covers an area of about 330,000 square kilometers, about the size of Germany. Because of the extremely harsh environment, it has been called the Sea of Death since ancient times, and it is one of the most dangerous places in the world. However, it is in this daunting desert that there is a super project built by the Chinese, the Darim Desert Highway that runs through the north and the south, which another miracle created by the Chinese. What's more, it is also the China's first desert highway achieves zero carbon emissions. The environment in the desert is extremely arid, especially in the shifting sand desert. It was no easy task to build and maintain a highway in the Taklamakan, the world's second largest shifting sand desert. So, how did this amazing miracle project come into being in such a harsh environment? The desert is a magical place where any life can be swallowed up by quicksand. If you don't govern it, then the rolling yellow sand will give you a fatal blow in any neglected detail. When building a road in the desert, you must first fix the sand, otherwise the wind and sand will bury the entire road, which is a great debuff for the maintenance of the road. In order to solve this problem, Chinese workers began to build grass grid protection projects along the whole line. A sand barrier was first built around the dunes on both sides of the roadbed to block some quicksand, and then lay grass squares one after another to block quicksand from the road. The so-called grass grid is actually a grid-shaped windshield made of reed materials on the flowing sand dunes. By roughening the ground, it reduces wind power, blocks quicksand, and protects soil and water. Large-scale machinery is basically useless for construction on such undulating sandy ground, so this task is basically completed by manual operation. Under the extremely cold and extremely hot conditions of the desert, the construction personnel must first carry each bundle of 70 kilograms of reeds into the desert, draw construction grid lines on the sand dunes, place the trimmed reeds on the grid lines, and use a shovel to embed the middle of the reeds in the sand, and finally form a square 1 meter long and wide. The desert is windy and the sand dunes are fluid. Only if the grass squares on both sides of the roadbed are built wider and more solid, the protection ability will be stronger. At 100 meters on both sides of the outer road of the grass square, wooden stakes are used as columns, nylon nets are used as fabrics, and the two are tightly tied together with thin iron wires to build a strong sand-proof fence. Thus a green barrier hundreds of kilometers long is formed, which is also the first defense line to block wind and sand. Finally, a sand control system greenbelt with a length of 436 kilometers and a width of about 72 to 78 meters was built on both sides of the desert road, running through the entire Taklamakan Desert. It was fully completed in June 2005. In order to maintain this green passage, a well house will be set up every 4 kilometers on the desert highway. There are 108 well houses distributed along the whole road, and a couple lives in each well house, and they take good care of these windproof vegetation every day. This huge greening project is also a miracle of mankind's victory over the desert. The existence of the greenbelt makes part of the sand dunes in this mobile desert immobile and avoids the risk of being submerged by yellow sand. At the same time, without the protection of the 108 couples year after year, there would be no unimpeded desert road. Most importantly, the Darim Desert Highway, which traverses the Taklamakan Desert in Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, has been turned into a zero-carbon one, thanks to a transformation project completed earlier this month for the irrigation system along its shelter belt. After the transformation project, shrubs along the highway are now irrigated with the help of solar power-fueled pumps, instead of diesel ones. The project is estimated to cut diesel consumption by about 1,000 tons and carbon dioxide emissions by 3,410 tons per year. After learning about the incredible Chinese desert highway, now let's see how the Chinese turned the desert into an oasis. Although China has a vast territory, it suffers from desertification, and large tracts of land have lost their original value. The increasingly serious desertification trend has made China have to do something. With the unremitting efforts of the Chinese, the first desert in China that is about to disappear has appeared, which is the Muas Desert. On April 22, 2020, the Shaanxi Provincial Forestry Bureau announced that its decertified land treatment rate has reached 93.24%, which means that the Muas Desert is about to disappear from the map. Besides, the desert area is still shrinking with an annual rate of 1.6%. If the trees planted by people over the years are connected at 1 meter intervals, the length is enough to circle the equator 54 times. So, what did the Chinese do to make it the first desert in China to disappear? The governance of the Muas Desert actually started very early. In the 1960s, China put the project of transforming the desert on the agenda. In the past few decades, both the government and the people have contributed to the desertification control in their own way. Since the 1950s, the establishment of the Shanbei Sand Prevention and Afforestation Bureau marked the beginning of people's control of the Muas Desert. In the beginning, the main measures to control the Muas Desert were stabilization of sands and irrigation. At that time, the communication conditions were very poor, and the access roads were inconvenient, so sand control was extremely difficult. In 1959, the Yulin government implemented a policy of subsidies for sand control and established a state-run forest farm, so that sand control was no longer limited to stabilization of sands and irrigation, but to mobilize people to plant trees together. In this way, a large number of farmers have been to this barren land with saplings and began to plant trees. Under the persistence of generations of sand control workers, the windbreak forest belt in the Muas Desert has been built, and remarkable results have been achieved. During this period, people will not only plant trees, but also use grass squares to conserve water in some areas that have not yet achieved transformation. Today's Muas Desert has not only become greener and greener, but also brought extremely high economic benefits to the local area. The double effect sand control and poverty control have been combined. And the Muas Desert would become the first desert in China to disappear. Okay, that's all for today. In the next video, we are going to introduce the reservoirs and granaries in the China's desert. Please subscribe us so that you wouldn't miss anything. Thanks for watching. Bye.